Me again. I'm back in my hotel room because why break with tradition too much? I had to drop off some stuff that I didn't want to carry to the play tonight. Oh my God! You ever gonna? Yeah, I just almost blew something big. I signed up for a class that is an introduction to Icelandic history, culture, cuisine, and language through Creative Iceland. I'm plugging them because I'm specifically naming that agency in case anybody is going to come out here and look for things to do, because I got to also meet the creator today, the guy who created Creative Iceland. It's actually kind of part of a bigger movement worldwide for creative tourism, but I was popping around kind of down northwest, down by the harbor, and I'm like, oh man, I gotta go. Was doing some shopping that I hadn't originally planned on. Went to the Saga Museum. I'm like, oh, I gotta go climb the hill and then go down the hill in another direction to try to get this class. Maybe I should just call and say, oh, something came up. But I prepaid for it and I wouldn't get a refund. And I thought, well, I really wanted to go do this because I wanted to go, take the culture class and they teach you how to cook a few things. And I wanted to have that to take home, to come away and be able to make something. Me, I like to make things, so I thought, well, I want to learn how to make and do something that I can take back home. Oh, what I would have missed. So this class is taught at a local kind of cultural school institute. Gia and Ilk, her husband, they beat my pronunciations into much better shape, but certain sounds are really hard just to speak if you're not used to them. It was great fun. The other student in the class, name was Stephanie. She's from Montreal, from Quebec. She's a journalist, and she was actually covering Creative Iceland, the organization, the business. But she was great fun. It was funny because as a native French speaker, there's certain sounds, I think it was the voiced TH, like that she had a really hard time with, and I didn't, but then there was a couple of other sounds where she was like, pa-pow, and I'm like, you can't do that. That's not, mouths don't work that way. But yes, we had great fun. First, they started talking about the history of Iceland and a lot of the culture, and talked about the crime rate at one point and how criminals were treated and the first prisons. And originally they were shipped off to Danish prisons and so forth, and it was great fun. But at one point, Gia said something about the fact that the Reykjavik, and R's are rolled in Icelandic. It's Reykjavik. I can't do it on demand. Reykjavik. And I, of course, am exaggerating it because it's the only way I can make it happen at all. This was a problem when I took 4 years of Spanish, and it was 5 years after graduate high school before I could roll an R. But they talked about the city police trying to go behind the backs of everybody and buy guns, and the people were like, no, and the view on gun culture and whatnot, and how when the police carry guns and the criminals start carrying guns, and the good normal people are stuck in the middle. As she's saying that, I nothing, but I look and I see Stephanie basically going, and I looked over at her and started laughing. Because of course, for convenience, I introduced myself as being from Chicago. It's a lot easier to say Chicago than Northwest Indiana, which is kind of a suburb of Chicago. I'm from Chicago. So if any of you are the suburbs are not Chicago purists, sorry. But it was hysterical. As soon as I caught the side eye from her, I started laughing, and then we had to explain to Gia why this was incredibly funny. Well, not funny, but anyway, the situation was funny. Then we go over and we start doing these dishes, and they had the bread that I was talking about from breakfast this morning, rugbrauð. Now I know why. Now I've seen the word, and I'm going. Now I'm understanding what the word was that our receptionist said this morning when I asked her what that bread was. So the link that I posted this morning is correct. That was that bread. And Gia was explaining that traditionally it's made because you take the dough, and there's no yeast, but it uses like baking soda, baking powder. It uses that as the leavening agent, and you would put it next to a geyser or something like that for 12 hours. So I'd seen a recipe where they were talking about you bake it at like 220 for 12 hours. And I was like, this has to be a mistranslation. This is a misunderstanding. There's no way you would ever bake bread for 12 hours like that. You do. That's why it says 12 hours. And I just thought that was so cool to learn. At one point, she had to step away, and her husband came along. Now, her husband's name looks like Eagle. I've seen that Eagle Saga. Turns out that's not how that's pronounced at all. That G is kind of a Y kind of sound. And there's a lot of things in Icelandic. When you see the double L, it's actually more of a T sound, and I don't get my cheeks far enough apart to make it quite right. And he worked with us several times on it. But so his name is like Eat. Yeah, Eat. And so that saga is actually, Eat Saga kind of thing. Still not getting it right. This church is not Hallgrímskirkja. It is Hallgrímskirkja. Hallgrímskirkja. I finally got it right one time, so I graduated from the class. They gave us a diploma and everything. And Eat was serving us a boiled sheep's head. I have pictures. And I'm like, he's explaining as he's cutting up this head. No joke. If you're squeamish, quit listening right now. And so he's cutting up the jowl meat, and he's putting that on one part of a platter. And Stephanie and I are like, okay, we got this. Squeamish, mute me. I'll go like this when you can unmute me. Then he cut out the tongue. And I'm like, I don't think I've ever eaten tongue in my life. I've made a conscious effort not to eat tongue. I think organ meats are gross. But of course, at like Trígetsri 12th night, yeah, this past one, it was I ate deer heart, and it was fantastic. So I'm like, I didn't fly 3,000 miles to be a wuss. He's going to cut up some tongue. I'm going to eat some tongue. And then he carved out the eyeball. And Stephanie was like, She goes, I draw the line at eyeballs. And I'm like, 3,000 miles? Don't be a wuss. I said, I can try this. They had several beverages on hand, and she's like, okay, if you're gonna do it, I'm gonna do it. I'm not gonna be a wuss alone. And I'm like, that works better. I don't want to be brave alone. We got this. So we had glasses of Appelsín orange soda and this malt flavored non-alcoholic drink that was actually really good. And so we went in order. We did the regular meat, and it was nasty. It was like jowl meat. Oh, was not tasty. Then we each took a bite of the tongue, and it was like, oh, this is much better. And we both girded our loins and popped in a wedge of the eyeball, and it was horrible. It was nasty, very, very fatty, and it was nasty. And then we both chew, swallow, chug, and got over that. You can unmute me now. But they had so many neat things to say. She was talking about Cafe Loki, where I ate yesterday, and commended that woman. The woman who runs it, she said, it was the first to really do traditional Icelandic food. And people were like, why? Why would you do this? This isn't fancy. And she clued in and was like, but to tourists it is fancy. That's people come here for Iceland, not for French cuisine. And it's taken off and it's become a big deal. I know there's other ones doing this and kind of cloning her methodology, because they're realizing tourists come to Iceland for Iceland. And she said loves how the woman does it in sustainable things and whatnot. Had a lot to say about another woman, a local entrepreneur who lost her business, I think it was, or she'd moved back to the country right when the economy tanked, and she started making salt blends and local flavored syrups and whatnot, because she was like trying to do anything. And now she's a big name, a very successful business, and it's sold all over. And just had said it was really committed to them, and talked about the fact like they hand pack their things, because the only machine they could get that would pack these containers of salt came from China, and they couldn't confirm the material security, as I would call it, but the food chain of the process, and make sure that it wasn't made by child labor, and make sure that the materials were actually food grade. And they said until we can basically get a fair trade, ethically clean machine to do this, we're going to pack it by hand. So cool. Such a great time. Learned a lot of pronunciation tricks. I always thought the famous volcano that exploded a couple of years back was Eyjafjallajökull. It's not exactly. It's Eyja Fjall, because it's that double L. Fjall. Fiatla. It's Scatla. Aya Fiatla Yokeltel. It's that final TL sound thing that now when I hear it, I get it. I get what it's supposed to be, but it's just so hard to contort it out of my mouth. But so then anyway, so when we go back to food, and it was the rye bread with trout and rye bread, and she's like, it's always butter, bread, then butter, and then put anything, on top. She teaches us how to make Icelandic pancakes, and Icelandic pancakes are what we would call crepes. What we would think of as a pancake, they call scones. And anything I've had that was a scone was not like this. It was like a rigid croissant. It's a much larger pastry, and these were just regular, what I think of as a pancake, they call a scone. But they taught us to make pancakes, which are Icelandic scones. And she teaches this whole history of her grandmother teaching her. And back then, this was food from back when Iceland was a very, very poor country, and they barely had any dough. And there's all these stories and things that go into it that I'm not going to repeat. Certainly not on a video I'm going to make public on YouTube. Go take the class and learn it from Gia. But they teach you how to make these pancakes and how to eat them, and there's a very specific way, and the types of jellies you put on it, and what they meant for your social standing, and how you fold them, and there's a reason you fold them, and you put on whipped cream that they whipped fresh. Very, very, very cool. Very, very, very tasty. So they had us make a few. So I actually, on my way back, was coming up Reykjavik. Pronunciation getting better. It was one that we specifically covered that word, and there's a whole history behind this word, and laundresses, basically women who had to do laundry in hot pools. But I was coming up Reykjavik, and found a kitchen shop, and so I bought a traditional Icelandic pancake pan, so I can come home and I can make these pancakes. Teach mom, the chef, how to do it. I got a couple of other, it's not going to be a surprise, but a couple of traditional Icelandic pastry tools as a present. So hi, Mom. I'll explain them when I give them to you. But so then they're explaining at one point Icelandic names and how the names work. And this is my diploma. And I'm presuming that it's not going to be mirrored. It's actually addressed to my new Icelandic name. They took our names and they wanted our parents' names, and they converted them by sound into normal Icelandic names. So I expanded for them what CJ meant. If you don't know, you still don't get to know. But Klingur, he said it's pretty rare. He goes, it's pretty rare as an Icelandic name, but it is an Icelandic name. It's just kind of archaic, I guess. But Klingur Morsu o Klinguson is my name in Icelandic. And he said, in his generation, it was the kids were kid, then father's son, or father's daughter. And he said the neat thing is now, in the past, I guess 20, 25 years was the impression I got. He said they actually name it with both parents' names. So they have its mother's name followed by U for and then father's name, son. So your name now has both your parents in it and not just your father. But oh my gosh, what a great time I had. Even if I had to eat the disgusting thing I mentioned eating while I was muted that I won't repeat for those with really squeamish stomachs, because you don't want to hear that. Just a fantastic time. I'm so glad that I didn't skip that. That would have been a tremendous loss. But lots of neat stuff on the pronunciations. I got all these kind of notes. And they left us with postcards. The Icelandic alphabet, again, hoping that it's not mirrored, but Halló, Ást, Björk, Dir, Thav, Elska. I'd have to look up that one that means I. Fiskur, Geysir, Han, Sigur, Íslendja, Polnunkaka, which is actually pancake. It was fascinating. Accents over letters don't mean it changes the stress, it changes the sound of the letter. You've got Halló, but then an A with an accent is like, I think it was Oist. I've got it all written down. It takes some studying. Took all these tons of notes. She makes this dish. It's angelica leaves, fried in a little butter with garlic. And they put that on bread. Fantastic. drank whey, and this is not whey like I've had before. This is a really strong whey. They use it as a preservative, like vinegar. Skier and ate crowberries, crowberry jelly. Not something I think we really have in North America. A lot of neat history. So there were some students who were studying over in mainland Europe who basically got bothered by how the language was being corrupted, so to speak, and they went back to the sagas primarily and quote unquote purified the language. So Icelandic today is more like Icelandic 1,000 years ago than it was 200 years ago. A lot. I mean, it was 4 hours long. A lot of neat culture and whatnot. And Stephanie was snapping away photos because she's there for her newspaper. And then she sat and they were talking, and it was the guy from Creative Iceland talking about creative tourism, and he hand selects these classes, and it's problematic because there's people who come to him and like, oh, we want to be in your program, and he goes, not everybody gets listed, and it was a fantastic talk about, they were talking about the geothermal spas, and unbidden, they were like, look, everybody has to go do this. And like, you have to understand, you go there and nobody thinks about body image. It goes, it doesn't, fat, thin, tall, short, none of it matters. Nobody cares. It doesn't even enter anybody's mind. They talked about it being like, they can't go to the beach. They can't really go to a lot of places to have a picnic. So it's a communal area. People go to the geothermal spas and have community time. And I said, so the Blue Lagoon, which is where I'm going on my way out of town Friday, I said, is that pretty authentic, or is that incredibly touristy? And they had great things to say on why it is incredibly unspeakably touristy and why you still need to go. She said, first off, if you're just into spas, it's a fantastic spa. She's like, it's worth the money just to go for what it is. But they had fascinating things to say about, just because it's touristy doesn't mean that it's not worth the time. It's not worth the effort. But they did have also very good things to say about the authentic native geothermal spas. But yeah, I was going to do most of my souvenir shopping yesterday, and instead I've pretty much melted my debit card today. Had a great time. Just confirmed my ATV ride for tomorrow. They're picking me up at like 8:15 in the morning. I've got a 1 or 2 hour ride, and then I come back, so I'll hit the streets more tomorrow. Got a couple museums to hit tomorrow while my 72-hour pass is still good. Getting ready to head off to Icelandic Fish and Chips for dinner, and then to go see the sagas. And fortunately, they mentioned this play. I didn't mention that I was going there, but they really commended this play. It's the Icelandic sagas in 75 minutes at the Harpa Hall. I'm working on that. And they said that there's approximately 50 surviving Icelandic sagas. And they said this play, when they wrote it, these two actors who wrote it, they were adamant they had to draw something from each of them. They said maybe it's one sentence or one quote. They said it's heavy on the humor, but they were hearing very good things from tourists and natives alike. They were wanting to go see it, but they hadn't gotten tickets yet. So I'm going to go see that tonight at 8 o'clock. Then I don't know, on the way back, maybe find a third Icelandic beer to try. ATV tomorrow and wandering, and then Thursday is my, I've only been here 2 days. Thursday is my all-day photo tour. And then on Friday, you hit the Blue Lagoon and come home. So ready for my own bed. But yeah, so if anybody is planning on going to Iceland, look up Gia's class. I can tell you Creative Iceland has, and that's how I booked it. And the guy who ran it, I thought, ooh, this guy's got a good thought process about tourism and about culture and how important it is. And so I would plug Creative Iceland as a cool way to go and book these kind of things. But yeah, bye.